Coverage of the brand new Pope, an American, Pope Leo XIV. Joining me now, former Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, Richard Stengel, and former Republican Ohio Governor John Kasich. Both are MSNBC political analysts. I still have Chris Jansing with me. Chris, before we talk about the politics, I want to ask you about the pathway for an American to become Pope.
Every single person I talked to about Cardinal Prevost said, this, all great things, but he's an American. There wasn't a single person who didn't think that being an American kept him out of it. For decades, it was just accepted an American would not be Pope. Look, you can look at his credentials. One of your guests said this, you know, missionary, evangelization, very important. He's had curial positions that allowed him to meet with a lot of the cardinals. He's a polyglot. He can speak to people in a lot of languages. But there's two things that haven't been talked about that I want to point out that were part of his path, I'm sure. One is the line you've heard a bunch this week. If you go into the conclave of Pope, you leave a cardinal. He did not do that. He has always laid low. He's naturally not flashy. He doesn't give a lot of interviews. He never sought the limelight. And I think for a lot of people who felt maybe that Pope Francis spent a little too much time out there taking the accolades, they wanted someone who was going to focus more on the core mission of the church, number one. And I think the second thing is he's an Augustinian. And Augustinians take a vow of obedience. And so throughout his career, when he has been asked to do things, will you go to Peru? When this Pope, Pope Francis, said to him, I think I might appoint you to the head of the dicastery for bishops, he said to him, I will do what you believe the church needs and what I am called to do. One of the fascinating things that I would love to know is when he went into the room of tears, because men have gone in there and thought, what am I getting myself into? Not very many, but a few.
And they've cried.
And a number of them we know have cried. We know Pope Benedict was waiting to go. He just bought a house with his brother and was going to go retire.
And he famously retired from the papacy.
Famously did retire. That he is somebody who is obedient. And there was a famous story about a wise older priest who said to him, in your younger years, it's going to be the vow of celibacy that's difficult. In your later years, it's the vow of obedience. And that obedience calls him to live the life of the missionary, of spreading the word.
It's a hard thing to be Pope.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? One of the people I talked to at the funeral came out and she said, I'm praying. When she went to see lying in state of Pope Francis, she said, I prayed for the new Pope. I don't know why anyone would want to take this on.
Let me read from Crux now about the idea of becoming an American Pope. I think this is interesting. Once upon a time, it was said that the idea of an American Pope was unthinkable. In the beginning, it was for basically logistical reasons. Steamships from the New World took so long to reach Rome that American cardinals often arrived too late to vote. And in any event, they were never part of the political sausage grinding before the conclave began. Later, the veto on an American Pope became geopolitical. You couldn't have a superpower Pope, or so the thinking ran, because too many people around the world would wonder if papal decisions were really being crafted in the Vatican or at the CIA headquarters in Langley. Today, however, that logic feels superannuated. It's a flip from the criticism of JFK. Is he going to take orders from the Pope instead of the American people? Governor Kasich, I want to ask you this. Does an American Pope make Catholicism more relevant in America? Does it make it more relevant in American politics, even?
Well, first of all, I think you ladies have done a fantastic job. I've been watching you all day, off and on, and Chris was there when it actually happened. Congratulations. She did fantastic. Look, I think what's happened here is it seems as though, now I haven't talked to everybody, but everybody that I sense is happy. They're really pleased about the fact that he was picked, not because he was an American, but he was picked because of his concern for the poor, his concern for the downtrodden, and a sort of a continuation of Francis without him being Francis. And we should make no mistake about it. Francis was able to put him into certain positions that allowed him to be in a position of being able to be selected Pope. And so I think what you have here is somebody who can maybe pull both sides together, and somebody that's going to speak with a kind heart. And I believe we not only need this in America, but we need this worldwide to remember the love of Jesus and the love of our Father. And I think that that becomes more and more attractive. And I guarantee you tonight there are people who have never paid attention to this who are saying, I wonder what this whole Pope thing is all about. And maybe this is pretty good. So I'm thrilled with it. I'm happy about it. I think it's a great step forward. And but I'm less concerned that he's an American as opposed to the way he looks at the world and the way he looks at people.
Politically speaking, he's going to be pretty relevant here and already is so. We have been able to find his Twitter feed. He's either tweeting himself or retweeting about American politics, criticizing this president's stance on immigration, criticizing recently the Oval Office meeting between him and the president of El Salvador. He's criticized child separations. He's criticized the rampant gun problem we have in this country. He's criticized racism. MAGA has gotten a hold of it as well, and some loud voices within the MAGA universe are angry about his selection as Pope. They see it as, I don't want to say an act of war, that's too strong, but they see it as a rebuke of the president, and not in a kind way. Does Donald Trump very famously in 2016 went after Pope Francis and criticized him on the campaign trail, and that was just one of the many one of many people that he criticized that no one would ever have dared to do before. Do you foresee this having legs in the American political landscape?
Yeah, you summarized it well. I mean, it may indeed be a rebuke of some of those conservative ideas. I don't know that the Cardinals are thinking about American politics as much as we are, but he's a different kind of American.
And he's thinking about American policy, if not politics.
Yeah, no, I think he's been, righteous about that. It reminds me that Joe Nye died this week. Joe Nye was the great Harvard political philosopher who came up with the idea of soft power. Soft power as opposed to hard military power, the power of culture, the power of influence. This has an enormous soft power index for America in a positive way, as Governor Kasich said. He's a different kind of American. He represents values that are different than the values on the world stage of the MAGA Trump administration. Concern for the poor, concern for immigrants, all of the things that Francis talked about. I think it's a boon to the idea that Americans don't have to be this kind of autocratic model that we're seeing with the Trump administration.
He's lived an integrated life. I mean, he's lived in many other places. He speaks multiple languages. He's an American who has not isolated himself in America. He's not a nationalist. In fact, when he was rebuking J.D. Vance, he was rebuking the idea that Vance put forward, which is that in the Christian faith, you love yourself first, your family next, your community after that, and then everybody else. And the rebuke from Pope Leo XIV before he became Pope was no, that Jesus did not say that there's an order to your love. Yes. This is a man who has been global, as America in this moment is becoming much more insular.
Yes, as Jesus said, who is my neighbor? That was the attitude. There is no hierarchy of love. And I think, again, not to be too kind of obvious about it, but he is a kind of contrast to Trump himself and the Trump administration in the things that he cares about. He's compassionate. He's compassionate for the poor. You treat the immigrant like you treat your own family. That's very, very different than what we're seeing in the White House.
We're also just getting word that Donald Trump and President Zelensky are speaking by phone. This is according to President Zelensky's spokesperson. We don't have any details. They say they'll provide some details. This, of course, is as this administration is trying to find some sort of way out of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, but Russia doesn't seem to have any desire to stop fighting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a kind of rule of law, which is the rule of war, rather, that the country that is gaining territory doesn't want to negotiate, and the country that's losing territory does want to negotiate. Putin is in a advantageous position for himself now. He's manipulating Donald Trump. Zelensky is trying to get back in Trump's good graces. And Trump, you know, to his credit, doesn't like to see the bombing of civilians in Ukraine. He doesn't like to see that kind of devastation. And, you know, maybe Zelensky will have some purchase on this now.
We will see. We'll wait for that readout. Rick Stengel, really good to have you. Governor Kasich, thank you so much for watching on and off. I believe, I hope that when it was off, it was only because you needed to take a bathroom break or something, and you came right back and you kept on watching. But
well, you guys have done. Listen, you've done a great job. Just remember this about this man. He's a man of God. So he looks at every human being equally. No one's more important than anybody else. And for those that are down and out, those who are downtrodden, those who live in the shadows, he believes they ought to be lifted. And I think that is a wonderful message worldwide and, of course, here in the United States of America. Thanks,
and Governor,
ladies.
Wasn't it amazing when Chris yelled out, "It's an American"?
Did I yell?
You did.
Oh.
You exclaimed.
It was so exciting. And she'll tell you, the last time I was on here, she said she found out my nickname was Pope. So I feel a real connection to this guy.
Well, you are neighboring with Illinois. I'll give you that. Governor Kasich, thank you so much. Chris Jansing, thank you for sticking around with me. You know I'm not a Catholic. I appreciate you being here.